الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا ماكثين فيه أبدا وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم إن يقولون إلا كذبا فلعلك باخئ نفسك على آثارهم إن لم يؤمنوا بهذا الحديث أسفا إنا جعلنا ما على الأرض زينة لها لنبلوهم أيهم أحسن عملا وإن جائلوا ما عليها صعيدا جرزا أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا إذ أوى الفتية إلى الكهف فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا صدق الله العظيم.
قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. تلك آيات الكتاب الحكيم هدى ورحمة للمحسنين الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم بالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. ومن الناس من يشتري لهو الحديث ليضلوا عن سبيل الله بغير علم ويتخذها هزوا أولئك لهم عذاب مهين. وإذا تتلى عليه آياتنا ولا مستكبرا كأن لم يسمعها كأن في أذنيه وقرا فبشره بعذاب أليم إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم جنات النعيم خالدين فيها وعد الله حقا وهو العزيز الحكيم خلق السماوات بغير أمد ترونها وألقى في الأرض رواسي أن تميد بكم وبث فيها من كل دابة وأنزلنا من السماء ماء فأخرجنا به جنات وحب الحصيد فأنبتنا فيها من كل زوج كريم هذا خلق الله هذا خلق الله هذا خلق الله فأروني ماذا خلق الذي خلق الذين من دونه بل الظالمون في ضلال مبين صدق الله
اللهم نور ظاهری به طاعتك و باطنی به محبتك و قلبی به معرفتك و روحی به مشاهدتك و سری به اتصال استقلال حضرتك یا ذوالجلال و الاکرام. Vici savici mulane tadi apan pancar sai sining jagad kasamatan tening zote kang moco kang angrungu kang anurat kang anyimpani dadi ayu ning badan kinarya sesambur yen winatakno ing toya kinarya wus rara kelis laki wong edan The origin of everything is in a single molecule, then scattered into the world in accordance with the divine essence, Zat. That which is read, recited, and heard, written, and remembered, becomes a blessing on the body, a mist of auspiciousness. When recited into the scattering of water, lovers are united, the insane are healed.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى ولليل آخرة لك من الأولى والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. اللهم ارحمنا بالقرآن واجعلنا هدى ونورا ورحمة. اللهم ذكرنا منه ما نسينا وعلمنا منه ما جهلنا وارزقنا تلاوته آناء الليل والنهار واجعلنا حجة يا رب العالمين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا تأويل الكتاب وآتنا الحكمة وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى محمد كما صليت على محمد في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. الأذان المغرب. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله. And that concludes.
Hi folks, thanks for coming. My name's Andy McGraw. I'm a professor in the music department here at the University of Richmond. This event is part of the Tucker Boatwright series that we're hosting in the department this year called Beyond Exoticism. This is the second event of the year. Earlier today at 6:30, Jessika and Yunus, who I'll introduce here in a minute, did a live broadcast on WRIR of liturgical music and the call to prayer. And this event, which will run about an hour, is going to be moderated by Dr. Ann Rasmussen from William and Mary, who specializes in music from the Islamic world. And she runs the Middle Eastern Music Ensemble that's going to be featured in the third event of the series this Wednesday, a collaboration with Richmond Symphony Orchestra. That's at 7:30 in Camp Concert Hall. And that event is going to focus on Middle Eastern influence in the symphonic tradition, and Ann's ensemble is going to be playing with two really, really outstanding Persian musicians as part of that, so please come to that as well. So I want to introduce our guests tonight. Next to Dr. Ann Rasmussen is Yunus Khaerisman. He's an imam. He's from Java. He's an activist and organizer and does all kinds of good stuff. And Jessika Kenney is also an activist and healer and vocal faculty at Cal Arts. This event is going to involve discussion, performative aspects, and at the end of it, we can open it up for any questions that you might have. But Dr. Rasmussen is going to moderate it. So let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Andy, Professor McGraw. Are we amplified or not? Should I just speak from here?
I think you can speak.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for inviting me. I feel a little bit ancillary to this whole enterprise, particularly after just hearing Yunus and Jessika and the beautiful recitation and calls to prayer that they did for a live broadcast on the radio from 6:30 to 7. And so I'll ask them to do to do a little bit more of that for you. But this is rather informal, and I thought maybe I would go ahead and speak for about 10 minutes first, because once they start talking to you, you won't be interested in anything that I have to say. My background is, well, first of all, in Western music and classical music, and also in jazz. But when I started studying ethnomusicology, I took the deep dive into Arab music. And of course, as a student of Arab music, and that's really been my main music for the past almost 30 years since I was in graduate school. The ensemble that I direct at William and Mary has been going on for 20 years. Even though the community that I worked with in the United States were primarily Arab Christians, obviously the traditions of Islam seriously inform the music. And that's an interesting conundrum, because I think in many religions there are ideas about music and indulgence in music and the power that music has on the soul. It can make you crazy. It can make you achieve kind of states of ecstasy and make you want to dance on the tables and drink wine and have fun with people that you love. And all religions have a moment where they say, whoa, that's too far. And so while in Islam we have this idea that there is a question about the permissibility of music, there's also a recognition that people who are deeply involved in the Muslim religion and in language performance, the performance of language in Arabic, are also very musical. And it's often, and there's a real relationship between people who are recognized as fabulous singers who have also studied the Quran. One thing to understand about Islam is that whether it's practiced in Richmond or Los Angeles or Venezuela or Indonesia or Aleppo or Mecca, it's always practiced in Arabic. So you can study the Quran in translation in Spanish, in English, in whatever your vernacular language is, but when you learn to recite, that you learn in Arabic, and that as experience, it is experienced in Arabic. So my research in Indonesia, after my Arab research with Arabs in the United States, I had an opportunity to travel to Indonesia. And with a background in Arabic, I was very interested in all of this Arabic culture that was around, that was primarily about the religion of Islam in Indonesia. And just very quickly, people know, but they should know again, that Indonesia is the country, is the most populous Muslim country in the world. So there are more Muslims in Indonesia than in any other country in the world. All of the Arab world combined, maybe there are 20 or so countries in the Arab world that are the Arabic-speaking countries, so Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, and so forth. That only comprises about 20% of the world's Muslims. So Indonesia is an extraordinarily rich place for Islamic culture, and my research focuses on female reciters of the Quran and what they call seni musik Islam, or Islamic musical arts. And that actually is something that the three of us have in common. Yunus, and I'll ask them to talk about their background extensively, but Yunus, from an Indonesian family, but born?
Texas.
Born in Texas, okay. And Jessika, with your connection to Indonesia?
I studied singing for Javanese gamelan starting in 1997. And I should just apologize right now. I have a terrible sore throat, really bad timing for that. But hopefully you can humor me and get something out of the raspiness. But normally singing Javanese music has been a big part of my life. I've been doing that for the last 20 years. And so it's really interesting to be with Yunus and Anne, because I feel like the experience of Islamic music coming from that point of view, that would be my initiation into that point of view.
Yeah. And in terms of, since the topic of this evening is the call to prayer, we could have participants on this stage from many, many, many different cultures. It just so happens that we all have this connection to Indonesia. The call to prayer is interesting because as travelers, I'm speaking as an outsider, right? As travelers to any country where the call to prayer is broadcast in public, it can sometimes be, a little bit alarming. Whoa, what is that? And we often hear it on the news when there's any kind of news from somewhere in the Middle East or somewhere in the Arab world. Often we'll hear a little sound bite of call to prayer, which in some ways it can be informative, but it can be a kind of a cheap Orientalist, like, oh, here, now we're talking about this exotic other place. Let's play call to prayer. Even if the news bit itself is about, I don't know, kids playing basketball in the school courtyard. And so I think if we're outsiders to that tradition, I feel like we're a little bit estranged from it. So I'm going to take my sort of 10 minutes to try to invite you into this beautiful performance that is shared by Muslims throughout the world, and that is shared by anybody who is in a soundscape where there is call to prayer. Unfortunately, not so much here in the United States, but certainly if you've traveled to countless other countries, you'll come into this. So the call to prayer happens 5 times a day, very, very early in the morning, at noon, in the afternoon, in the early evening, and in the late evening. And it very much divides the time of day. When I was working with reciters and I would travel with them to competitions, I would say, well, when are we going to get together? Like, when is dinner? When does the action start? Like, when do I have to show up dressed and ready to go? And they'd say, well, after the evening call to prayer. I say, yeah, but what time is that? And it took me a while to understand that that's when everybody's done with their responsibilities for the day, and they can hang out and have singing and speeches and food and late night out to karaoke. And I'm talking about these are at festivals and competitions for the recitation of the Quran. So all kinds of other things that happen. But basically, you have several lines, and each is repeated. So as we listen to Yunus and Jessika, and I'm going to play one example. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. God is great, God is great. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I testify that there is no God but God, so that testifying that monotheism, right, just one God. Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. I testify that Muhammad is the prophet of God. Hayya ala salah, come to prayer. Hayya ala falah, come to salvation. And then the end can differ. We were talking about this. In the morning prayer, there's sometimes the line, prayer is better than sleep.
Yeah, as-salatu khairu min an-nawm.
Or you were saying also if there's an announcement of...
yeah, if there's a disaster, if there is urgency, like they will add on at the end.
Yeah.
After, because instead of coming toward salvation, come toward, come to the masjid.
Come to the mosque.
Come to the shelter, or come to, like, there will be changes on that.
Yeah.
But
So, I thought this is really, I was so privileged to be in Aleppo at the Great Mosque, which is in shambles now, in Syria in 1993, and I was able to record really one of the foremost muezzin. So the term Azan means call to prayer. It can also be transliterated as Adan or Adhan, and the muezzin or muezzin, depending on how you're transliterating your Arabic, is the person who does the call to prayer. And this Sheikh Sabri Mudallal invited us to record him, and it's really been a privilege to share this performance with my students, even though Sheikh Sabri is long gone. One of the things about the call to prayer is that the techniques and aesthetics of the recited Quran are part and parcel of that. And we'll ask maybe Yunus and Jessika to talk about that. But would it be okay to play this example?
Yes.
Just to get this idea. Okay. So here's Sheikh Sabri, and he's waiting until the exact time of the call, and he is singing into what is called a call to prayers sound system. He's in the Great Mosque in Aleppo, and then he's singing into the microphone, and then it's broadcast all over. You'll hear the other calls in the background that are coming from other mosques, and that's another thing that you never really hear it as a solo thing. You're always hearing it as a tapestry of other calls that are kind of weaving, you know, coming in and out. So let's hope this.
Plug your computer in.
Oh yes, I was making a little buzz, so I didn't want to.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Notice the second time, the phrase is much more ornamented and long. And this is all the aesthetics of singing.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
So you get the idea. Another thing that's so incredible about the performance of Arabic is these unvoweled consonants, singing through and these are all things that are practiced when you study tajweed. I'll just say two more things, and then ask our guests to comment. People from the West have been fascinated with the call to prayer. It's made its way into Orientalist compositions and so forth. And this is the great British Orientalist who wrote The Manners and Customs of the Modern Egyptians in 1836. And you see here he's got a transcription into musical notation of the call to prayer. And he writes that, you know, Egyptians are very fond of music, yet they regard the study of this art as unworthy to employ any portion of the time of a man of sense, leading a man into gaiety and dissipation and vice. Hence it was condemned by the prophet, but its use notwithstanding, even in religious ceremonies, especially by the darwishes, by the Sufis. And then he says, though the music of Egyptians is of a style very difficult for foreigners to acquire or imitate, the children very easily and early attain it. The practice of chanting the Quran, which is taught in all of their schools, contributes to increase their natural fondness for music. So why don't we turn it over to our guests, and then I have a few things that I think we all agreed on, but one is that even though it's a solo performance, it's very much a communal endeavor. Everybody experiences the call to prayer many times a day, sometimes from multiple places. Most young boys, most men have practiced it from an early age, and some callers to prayer are beautiful and some are less beautiful. Let's just put it that way. Some are virtuosic and some are less virtuosic, but it still fulfills a really important, such an important role in the soundscape and just in daily life, I would say, for Muslims and non-Muslims, and can be very beautiful to tune in. So, Yunus, tell us a little bit about how you learned and how you have come to be such a spectacular reciter and so forth, being born in Texas and growing up in D.C.
Yeah, in high school, I was part of a band that got famous locally. And then my parents decided that's not a good use of my talent. So it's like, off you go to Indonesia and learn to be a good Muslim man. And then when I was there, I fell in love with the Quran because you know, you need to give up everything and just learn the Quran. And I was 19, 20, coming to a city where it's essentially in the mountains, and you get to travel, you know, you go by the bus at a certain time, then you go by trains, and then you go by the horses, and then eventually you come to this mountain where you have to live off the land. You have to live off the land, and you have to and then you study the Quran and just, you know, try to be a good Muslim boy.
So were you in a pasantren?
I was in the Pasantren.
So this is, we hear about these religious boarding schools.
Yeah.
I've visited many of them and stayed overnight and have good friends, and it's really quite an institution in Indonesia, not just for religion, but also for reading, writing, and arithmetic, and learning how to live together.
Because it's a community of self-sufficient community where, like, the school is taught during the day, and then in the evening there'll be a religious school where you're taught how to learn, you know, like how to read Quran and Arabics and so on and so forth. Since I'm already graduated, so morning and evening I'll spend my time with 2-3 years old kids, or, you know, elementary kids who are just making fun of me for, like, I can't even read a single word. They're just like, okay. And it's like, you know, it's hard enough to speak Indonesian, it's hard enough to learn Arabic in Indonesia, but then the kid is relentless and savage. So, and I was just like, oh, okay.
And may I ask, were there girls and boys in the pasantren?
Yeah, it's boys and girls. Boys and girls. But the boarding school is divided. The boys on because they're living here, and the girls over there. But then, like, during the class, it's both together. So I found some teacher who were from Australia, and I found some teacher from. So it's like when it starts to speak English, I start understanding it easier. So then, once I got the basic, and I understood, like, how to read. Like a year later, my dad is like, "Oh, you good now? You should come back." I was like, "No, I want to stay. I want to finish." But then, so I went back. So when I got back, so I live in Texas, and since I know a few sound bites of Arabic Quran here and there, and since I'm a male and I've got privilege of just being a guy, apparently people are always like, why don't you just go lead? So then they'll make me lead prayers, and then so I'll be leading prayers. I'll be in the front when I'm just like, I like attention anyway. Sure, I'll be in the front. So then in the front, but then after a while, I realized that like I still have a lot of things to learn, because people would start coming to me saying like, oh, you don't even know this, you don't even that, you don't do that. So then I studied in Texas. I found converts from different background. I got teacher from Puerto Rico who memorized 4 different recitations of the Quran. The different styles, and, you know, there was I learned from Sheikh Chow from China. So we met, because Texas is so diverse, so I started learning from different people, and then after a while I accumulate the point where I know enough of the Quran where they start sending me to an actual, like, degree, so I can actually, so I'll be phoning in, I'll be reading, and then somebody will fix me. Because the thing about Quranic Arabic is that even if you don't speak Arabic language or wherever you're from, if I were to start reciting a verse and then I get it wrong, somebody listening in China will correct me. It's like, oh, you got that wrong. You see, you know.
So I want to get to Jessika, but one of the things that really struck me the first time I was living in Indonesia was they would have these call-in radio shows, and people would call in and they say, okay, what verse are you going to recite? Well, I'm going to recite, you know, such and such, and they'd recite, and, you know, and then they would correct the Arabic, and many people in Indonesia said, you know, the number of people that can recite are many. The number of people that can recite and read are less than that, and the ones who can recite, read the Arabic, and understand are fewer.
Yes.
But just studying and reciting well is recognized in Arabic, is recognized in Indonesia as quite meritorious. Yeah. The other thing that's really distinctive about Indonesia is that women are public. They're public as teachers, as reciters. They make recordings. They're on television. They are judges at these large competitions. Yeah. And I've been fortunate to work with many fine reciters, and women usually, however, do not do the call to prayer. That's reserved for men. So now, Jessika, you'll have to tell us about your experience moving from, you know, Indonesian arts, but then now as really a muezzina at the women's mosque where you live in California.
Yes, it's a little strange for me because my area of focus in life is music. And actually this path of offering and volunteering to do the Azan for the women's mosque was really more of my own personal spiritual need that I wanted to fulfill and offer something to the community. So in some ways, I do it reluctantly because I don't have that training, and I know how rigorous the tajweed element of Quran is. I have studied some Arabic music, so I also have great respect for maqam music, bass music. And on top of that, I've studied Persian music for the last 14 years, and I do read, write, and speak Persian language. So on Saturday, I did a performance for a very amazing group of Iranian professionals celebrating the birth of Rumi. And I recited his poem from the Masnavi, beginning of Masnavi, Beshno az ney, listen to the ney. And even at the end, there was one question about one word, but it's always disputed term. So I'm very comfortable with these that level of detail in Persian music. But when it comes to liturgical Islamic music, it's really something I'm just doing from a place of spiritual feeling, and I hope that I have the chance to really study it in depth and pursue that as a discipline, like Yunus has. But one of the things that I wanted to offer to this amazing community, maybe first I should explain a little bit about the Women's Mosque of America. It's a very amazing community in Los Angeles, and a few hundred members with people showing up, once a month for a Jummah, for a Friday gathering. And it's women only. And the idea is that it's not a substitute for another gathering space, but it's something to be added because so many Muslimas feel that they don't have the space that they need in their own communities to really give and do and share their knowledge and to really lead. So in this context, I came into it, just really excited to learn more, and was so amazed to hear all of these khatibas giving the sermons, and also the women doing call to prayer and sharing knowledge, something about Islamic feminism and how this is really something that existed in Islam from the very beginning, and proving that in very amazing ways. If you're interested to check out some of these sermons, they're online on the Women's Mosque of America website. And they actually asked me to give a sermon this summer as well. So I prepared for that and did that after doing the call to prayer for a couple of years off and on. And what's beautiful about the situation too is that it's a rotating volunteer basis. So the khatiba, the woman giving the khutbah is always different every month, and women of all different backgrounds, all different points of view on Islamic theology and practice, and also with the call to prayer, alternating volunteer women. So it's been incredible to listen to them and also to be able to offer that as a musician. So I'm getting back to what it was that I wanted to offer. I thought, my background, okay, I've studied Javanese vocal music, and that's very dear to my heart and also something that was formative for me in my own spiritual life. So, and I could say I experienced a kind of conversion in Central Java in the late 90s. And I was studying Sindanan, which is the solo female improvisational vocal music for the gamelan. So when I thought about this, they asked me to do the call to prayer, I told some Javanese friends of mine, and they suggested that I do a Javanese-based call to prayer. So that's what I performed also today for the radio program. It's, I think actually it's not an old call to prayer. It's a kind of reconstruction. And the muezzin who created this is a Javanese muezzin, and I'm sorry I did not bring his name, but if you look up Javanese Azan, actually it's probably the first thing to come up. And he uses very Arabic vocal technique and very Arabic tajweed in his vocal timbre, in the ornamentation, all the things that are very exciting to me as a vocalist. But he uses the notes and the mode of the Javanese scale called pelog. So I learned that and practiced that, and then did that as my call to prayer for the women's mosque.
I'm just going to jump in right here for a moment. So another kind of interesting little sort of sign on the road here is the word music, right? And the idea is music okay, and I think we would certainly describe Sheikh Sabri's voice or your voices as certainly musical. However, in Arabic, music and song are two different categories, right? So we could say, oh, you know, the baby crying is music to my ears, or the birds in the field are music to my ears. We sort of use music to mean anything kind of musical sounding. But in Arabic, there's a very distinct division between music, which would be instrumental music, music using instruments, and ghina, which is song or vocal arts. And even in Indonesia, this duality has been adopted. So, for example, if I'm playing with somebody and we're going to do something and we're singing in Arabic, and they would say pakai musik tidak, and that means, so they say, do you use music or not? What they're asking is, are you going to use instruments or not, right? So in a religious context, if you say you're going to use music, it means, are you going to use instruments, right? So that's interesting. So I would love for the audience who didn't get a chance to hear you between 6:30 and 7. Would you just demonstrate a little bit of the beginning of the Azan in your two different melodic styles?
Happily.
Sure. Yeah,
Would you do that? I mean, just to hear, like, kind of melodically and.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please.
You want to go
Okay,
for it?
sure. Thank you. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. I'll just stop there.
Oh, beautiful. I want more. Yeah, lovely, lovely, very nice.
Yeah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah.
Beautiful, beautiful, and very kind of Arabic sounding, but also Indonesian.
To add to that is that because I study classical, like when I had you're right, like the dichotomy was interesting because I had. I'm sorry. I guess it's time to the actual prayer calls.
You can get that app on your phone.
Yeah, people are always surprised when this happened. But because I was a musician for a long time, and then for some reason there's a saying that if you want to start doing Quran, then you can't do music at the same time. So so I had to stop that for a minute, and then become kind of well known in my own circle for the Quran. Until I met my wife, where we end up having a band, and then we just now kind of play but then I also known as the imam, as an ustad. I teach Quran, I teach Arabic, its meanings, understanding, and translations, and the tajweed, recitation.
Tajweed are the rules that you use to pronounce Arabic particularly for Quranic recitation.
Right.
And it's all about how the consonants and vowels go together, which vowels you can hold for a long time and do ornaments on. And my teachers would tell me, if you don't do it right, you marusakan ma'na.
Yes.
You break the meaning, right?
Yes.
That's the...
And he changes the word completely. Like sometimes the changes is normal, but sometimes, like for example, maliki and maliki. The elongation of the ma changes its meaning. One is a king, and the other one is an owner, which is okay because it sounds the same. But there are some words that when you just kind of like say it wrongly, then it just mean completely different things. Like for if a non-Arabic speakers usually are not keen to that, but like if the Arabics say, oh yeah, that's not right, like you can hear it. But that's why Quran, even like a lot of Arabs does not know how to read Quran as good as sure, but or just in general, like with non-Arabs, because it does take a little bit of learning. Like so there's a whole curve of like how to get to that, and then we kind of like, since we talk about exotic and then tokenized, it's like sometimes when you memorize the whole book, you are put in the front of a pedestal as if you were just so good, and that's what I suffer when I was very young, because it creates this dichotomy as if like I am the leader of the community, but I'm not. But then people put me as, oh, you know the most, so then go ahead. But I know how to read them, but I definitely does not have the life experience to handle a lot of situational that happens. But as it grows, we realize that there is actually an amazing art in the Quran that's forgotten, because when people decided to say like, you know what, this is just read the translation and look at how a translation come to be. For example, there's a verse in Mary, and I'll just do it very quickly. I was mentioning it to you earlier, that the ending of that is it's all rhymes except the hook. With the hook, which we all understood, and it's a regular saying with as a Muslim we say kun fayakun, like if God wanted be and it becomes. But how did that become so well known? It's because the whole verse changes his rhymes at that. For example, I'll read it out, and I'm just gonna quickly skim through. Kaf ha ya ain sad ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال رب إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيئا ولم أكن بدعاء ربي شقيا وإني خفت الموالي. And let me skip the next one. وإذ قال, and then the next page. خذ الكتاب بقوة وآته حكما صبيا وحلل من لدنا وزكى وكان تقيا. Let me do the next one. And then the next page. And then everything is It's by the time like واذكر في الكتاب مريم إن انتبذت منهما مكانا شرقيا. And then and suddenly like ذلك عيسى ابن مريم قال الذي فيه يمترون وإذا قضى أمر قال يقول كن فيكون on, and then back again to Ibrahim. واذكر في كتاب إبراهيم إنه كان صديقا نبيا. So if you were an Arab at the time when the revelation came out, where they don't know how to read or write, it's all like the televisions, the music, the storytelling is really literally is people sitting down and giving storytelling. People pay attention to this whole the rhyming sequence of and then it's talking about actors or players that they have no idea before, because revelations of the Old Testament and New Testament never reached to the deserts, right? And then but here it is Zechariah, John, Mary, Jesus. And then by the way, Jesus come to be because Allah say be, and then because God say be and then become. And then Abraham and Isaac, and just like so all the prophets afterward. But the concept is very interesting, that when this was revealed and the Muslim flee from the persecutions of in Mecca, when they ran to the Christian kingdom, and the Christian king were being told that to return back to the Muslim because they were runaway slaves, families that got to return back to where they come from. The Muslim recited this verse, and the king said, "Oh, like you and I are brothers in faith. Like, you know, like the difference between us is nothing but the very small thin line. Like, and then it's like you are protected here, and then it's like partly because of the rhyming sequence is so powerful that even as a non-Arabic speaker, it's like, whoa, how is that possible?
I'm going to jump in here because you're bringing up a really good, well, both of you are bringing up really good points. The idea that not only is it a communal endeavor, but it's a shared experience. And if I highly recommend a book, Approaching the Quran by Michael Sells, which really talks about how people experience the Quran. From cradle to grave, you're hearing these verses. And it's the short surahs, the short verses at the end of the Quran that everybody learns in nursery school, or you hear them at weddings and at funerals and when there's a ribbon cutting for a building or whenever. And so these rhymes, these end rhymes are in your ear, yeah. And so the idea that it's a communal experience, even though it's a soloist that delivers the Quran or the call to prayer. Another thing that's really interesting is this idea of, Iqra al-Quran bil-hun al-Arab. Read the Quran with Arab melodies. This is another kind of controversial topic, whereas Jessika is reciting with a very beautiful but traditional Javanese melody. For some people, this would be problematic because not only do you need to recite in good Arabic using the rules of tajweed, you also need to recite according to the system of Arabic musical modes called maqamat. And I think the reason people were interested in me as a researcher was because I could play the oud and I could sing songs in Arabic and I had this knowledge of maqam. So reciters loved to talk about that. But fights have broken out because of people reciting with Javanese melodies. Can you just like sing this sort of this scalar outline of what you were doing, Jessika, again?
Maybe I could give a little example of something that's like a Javanese poem, how it would be sung traditionally, and then kind of give like the contour of in the call to prayer, how that was used. So
you want to use that with me traditionally with the normal, so kind of like the contrast?
Yes, you could hear like a mochopat singing, which is the Javanese literary sung tradition, and then hear how that was applied in contemporary practice to call to prayer. So in the same mode, actually what's coming to mind right now is a Sundanese melody, not Central Javanese. I think he had very interesting, this is more West Java, but Abdi nandangan paudur lantaran kapegat asih. So that would be kind of more traditional literary interpretation, or a Javanese Putri Cina kelangsaran kawelas asih. And then call to prayer. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Something like that.
Yeah, and the association of those melodies with particular kinds of musics and particular kinds of contexts can suggest to some listeners things that are not necessarily religious, and that's where the interesting conundrum lies. But I have a little anecdote. I was with the director of one of the largest Muslim boarding schools in West Java called Al-Quran Al-Falah, and I was sitting with him, and I said to him, sir, I said, in my neighborhood in Jakarta, the muezzin from our mosque doesn't have a very good voice. And he didn't. He sang out of tune, and it drove me crazy. He just kind of bellowed away, and it kind of drove me nuts because I was with all these incredible reciters all the time who were also crazy about singing. They all love to just jump on stage and also sing, Arabic songs and all kinds of, devotional songs and so forth. And I was sure that he was going to say, well, madam, it just matters what's in your heart, because when God listens, he doesn't care if you have a bad voice. And he said to me exactly the opposite. He said, you know, that is such a problem, because they built so many mosques and there's so many people who are doing call to prayer that are bad at it. And you want a beautiful voice, because the whole idea is to draw people to the mosque, you know, with a beautiful voice. And so, so it's not just the words and it's not just the pronunciation, but the beautiful voice is also really prized. And those who have beautiful voices are nurtured and trained, and they go on to earn big prizes in competitions, and then really get amazing sort of engagements, like gigs, you know, flying all over the archipelago to you know, to recite at people's weddings, or
Yeah, I've done that. Like, they just flew me out just to do all that. But it's like,
great.
yeah, it's different places. But what's interesting to me, now that we talk about this, you remind me of the time when I actually visited Indonesia after I'm settled, after, you know, after married, kids, and then coming through. And it's interesting that my extended family will listen to an adhan happen. Well, we were talking, we're eating, whatever, what have you. When an adhan happened, traditionally you're supposed to settle in and wait and listen, and then you go to the mosque because it's time for prayers. But most people just sitting around, just we can just pray here, okay, or we just pray later, or just not. Like, you know, it's like, but I was so shocked, and I forgot how just the call of the prayers, it's create your days to be so, it's like, because at work, where I'm working, like, you know, it's like you have to work around prayers. But then here it's like prayers around your work, and it was just such a profound, simple idea that was just like, you know, I just have to go to the mosque now, because like, just give me a second. And they were like, why? Like, we can just pray. Like, no, it's just you don't understand. Like, I don't have this where I'm at in the States. Like, you don't get to hear like distance of like a delay of 5-6 seconds where somebody's Allahu Akbar, and somebody's like La ilaha illallah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala salah. It's just like, it's just such a, it's just like, yeah, I gotta go to one of these at least. I can't just sit, like, I gotta listen to this. And then we travel to, like, you know, outside of Indonesia, we go to like different places in the Arab world as well. It's like, oh, it's also similar. It's like, oh, it's such a shame that this beautiful melodies like that does not really exist here. And then so like that's when I decided to put the app on and say, when it's time to pray, like, I'm just gonna let it play. And then so it become a conversation. It's like, Yunus, what is that? It's like, oh, it's actually called the prayers. It's like, oh. And then so it become a conversation to kind of add on, to kind of show, like, yeah, this is something that is very valuable to me, because, you know, you wake up to it in the morning before sunrise, and then like your day is regulated, where like, you know, lunchtime, and it's like, it's always so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anybody's been to a town in Europe where there are lots of churches and all the churches have great bells and you hear them and they're, you know, and they're beautiful, you definitely remark. And then after a while, maybe it just becomes part of your soundscape and you don't notice it so much. I'd like to open it up for questions, but I had another thought to ask you about something.
Oh, I had something I wanted to mention. I actually learned the Fatiha in Javanese pronunciation and also in Persian pronunciation. So for me, that's a very spiritual feeling. And to try to correct that and make that into a classical Arabic pronunciation, even though it's classical Arabic, would be losing a particular element of a transmission. And I'm very interested in indigenous epistemologies and varied epistemologies, that there might be a whole system behind a way of doing something that maybe to an outside point of view is not necessarily respected or validated, but at the same time it's very, very rich and very full of a specific experience. So I was lucky to have some of those kinds of specific experiences. And really one of the things I love to hear is Javanese, Indonesian pronunciation of Quran that's not trying to be classical Arabic. And I've had friends who had some of those skills, and you know, I think socially it's not respected as in a conventional way, but I think in some communities it's very treasured too.
And I think it's valuable because diversity is a strength and it's a mercy. Because one of the first thing that I learned of the Quran was my teacher telling me Quran is like an ocean. You know, you can do so much with the ocean. Some people stare at it. Some people go in there swimming. Some people snorkeling, go on a ship. Some people take fish out of it. Some people wave and do all of this thing. But at the end of the day, what's interesting, like it's all part of that miraculous melody that make people gravitate toward. Like I know so many, because that's what it is. Like as I study, I thought I got it all locked down, and it turned out, oh, there's a different recitation from a different Arab country, and the way recitation is completely different than okay, so then I learned the second one, and I learned the third one. The third one is completely different than the other two, and it's like, it only makes sense that historical precedent that already exists for so many years, generation, this is a style that exists and valid. So it's not such an issue. And if you bring in like my wife coming in here as like, oh, it doesn't matter to me, it all sounds the same. Okay, then never mind. So it's just like it's all sounds the same, because for her it's more of religious matters. Like, oh, okay, then and it worked out for that too. And then my son is like, can you sing it this way? It's like, I like this one better. Like, okay, like I don't, okay, sure, like because each, but it helps when you actually know what I'm saying. So, because there'll be a verse where it's talking about something heavy, an exclamation point on it. Like it's difficult for me to sing it very lightly.
Yeah, the reciters that I studied would say you have to have the right dhawq, you have to have the right maqam, the right musical mode. So it's okay to just recite the way your teacher taught you, but really to be a good reciter, you need to be able to interpret the verses and use the right kinds of melodies and stuff. I wonder if some of our folks out here in the dark have some questions for Jessika or Yunus. Yes, Andy, please.
I don't want to push Jessica's voice very much. Could you, if it doesn't hurt, could you sing some of that kidum that you sang earlier and explain what exactly it is?
Oh, I'd love to. There's this incredible mantra. It's referred to as a mantra, but it's very Islamic. It's attributed to one of the 9 Sufi saints who brought Islam to Indonesia. His name's Sunan Kalijaga, and it's written in this Javanese literary form, which is can be sung. So this is one example, and Wici sawici mulane dadi apan pancar saisining jagad kasamadan tening zote kang maca kang angrungu kang anurat kang anyimpeni dadi ayu ning badan dadi ayu ning badan kinarya sesempur yen winatakno ing toya kinarya wusrara kelis laki wong edan nuli raras. It's You want to hear the translation?
Yeah, sure. My mom will love that. Like, can I get a record for you doing that?
When I'm not sick, I'm going to
Yeah.
send him
I think
a good recording.
I think that the music, the singing itself is healing your voice. Has special powers.
It's elevating in the moment of
Yeah,
singing,
yeah.
but then afterwards you come back to reality.
Please share with us the translation.
So this is the fifth stanza of this kidung, and to me it's the most exciting moment. But after this, he starts to name the prophets and talk about embodying an element of each of the prophets. A famous thing like, make my face the face of Joseph, make my voice the voice of David, make my veins the veins of Fatima. I think it's actually make my intestines the intestines of Yunus.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find this for you,
Yeah,
right?
Because Yunus was eaten by the whale.
Yeah.
Okay.
But before it gets to that point, talking about the prophets, it's this beautiful image of monotheism. The origin of everything is in a single molecule, then scattered into the world, Jagad, in accordance with the divine essence, Zat. That which is read, that which is heard, that which is written, and that which is remembered. So I think this is a very Quran moment where he's really talking about the relationship of the sacred word, the holy word. It becomes a blessing on the body. When you pray or recite into the water, it becomes a blessing. And lovers are united, and the insane are healed.
Beautiful.
I would like to note as well that growing up here, you always assume that Islam's always spread in such a violent way. But then when I go to Indonesia, the story of how Islam come to be is exactly as natural as it is, because like there will be people coming in to trade, and they will come, and then they will come in with their own skill set. Some of them create poetry, some of them make songs, some of them make puppeteers, and they start teaching
Through the arts.
through
really.
the arts. And the Hindus and Buddhists of each kingdom who used to fight each other, because in Indonesia we have like 4,782 islands. And each of these islands are compiled of different kings and queens who are just fighting each other, trying to get more piece of the land. And then somehow when the companions of the prophets and the saint, or like the people attribute different things depending on who you belong to. It's like, this is our group, the Sufi, this is our group. But essentially, it's 9 people of scholars, of saints who come through, and then they realize, like, some of them deal with the one another so fairly, and then so then the group of people decided, like, you know what, you're so good. Like, what do you believe in? And that's how Indonesia slowly starting to realize that actually these kings are so corrupt, we would just follow you guys instead. And the king realized, like, oh, in order for us to keep power, we gotta join this group. So then eventually that kingdom turned into one big Nusantara, which is where and then become the majority Muslim. But not all kingdom except Islam. That's why in Indonesia we have the Bali, who is more, there's Buddhism and Hinduism, and we have Palu, who is like this, like song with Christians, and like, but then because of that attitude that it was always known, like when I go to Saudi or Morocco, like people say, oh, you're from Indonesia, the land where there's no sword ever come. Like no sword was never been raised, because it was all through trades and interactions and communal.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, Indonesia is not without, sort of threats from hardline Islam knocking at the door, for sure, but
Sure.
it is a minority, and it really is known for a very tolerant kind of Islam with lots of variety. And
Yeah.
as somebody said to me, sometimes we wonder why the Prophet Muhammad wasn't born in Indonesia. It seems like it would be more apt. Did anybody else, a question or comment or request? Yes, please.
I was wondering if the gentleman performed some of the replicating performance that they did on the radio
Sure.
Could you do a little
Yeah,
pseudo?
yeah. I read a few verses and just kind of fill in the time, but I could read a few right now.
Something that you would hear everywhere, something that you would teach students right away in
Yeah, sure.
One of your classes.
I can do that. Like one of the things I've started is like the opening verse of the Quran when he opens and he start with praise be to God, the Lord of everything. So you start everything with praise, start with gratitude. You open the book and be grateful. I always teach my student when I first start, we always have these circles of shukr, circle of gratitude. Just tell me what you're grateful about. So then the person, the kids would just say, I'm grateful for games, for money, but eventually, no, I want something real. Just give me something real. And then eventually there's, I'm grateful for my parents, or I'm grateful for, for being here, I'm grateful for, and then start become real. And okay, now that you have that, then we can start this. We can say Alhamdulillah, which is now we can start with the gratitude. So like, the class always start with this positivity, because when you start to pray, that's how you start. You say like Alhamdulillah, like you praise be to God. So that's how I started. We can read this particular verse. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Ameen.
So this is what Yunus has done, is the Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran. And in a ritual evening, you might do this, 30 times, 50 times. People just say Al-Fatiha, and everybody sometimes do it very, very quickly. But this would be the one, like, the Lord's Prayer or something, the one that really everybody knows and has internalized. And even if they don't know all the words, you would have this in your kind of ear and kind of kinesthetically in your body. So again, that shared experience of the Quran, and but maybe not so beautifully done as Yunus.
Yeah, I was just trying to read it because there's a way to recite it longer and a different recitation, but like that's essentially the basic. That's what I would read, like if I were just praying, and then I think and I never really felt so connected to it because I didn't know it for so long, and it's like I never knew how to read it, but I always knew how to read it because as a kid you just like you hear it so much that you kind of know what it is. But then when I actually look into it and read, I was like, oh, like that whole circle things, like it kind of bring into reality, like, oh, this is actually a really powerful tool for having like a whole complete spiritual experience.
So Jessika, you said at the women's mosque it's quite multicultural, multinational, socioeconomic class.
Very much so. And a lot of activism going on through that group. It's really interesting that the women's mosque concept is very common in China. And it's one of the kind of foundations for it as an international movement is the fact that that's a really important thing that's been around for hundreds of years there. There's also another women's mosque in Copenhagen.
I was interested when in spring 2017, when I was in Indonesia for the whole semester, there was a conference of female ulama, female religious leaders from all over the Islamic world, and one of the most important questions for these women who are clearly major community leaders is what is the role of women in preventing and keeping hardline Islamism, extremism in check with their husbands, with their kids, with their co-workers, and they really, Indonesian Muslim feminists really have a major role to play, I think, in that world. But this was a conference that gathered people from Africa and from Turkey and the Middle East and everywhere. It was in Cirebon.
Were there any Chinese women there? Describing
I don't
about,
think it wouldn't take
so
long
curious.
to find out. If there were, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it was quite an open conference. So,
a lot of my teachers are actually female too. So it's always it's fascinating to me, like now that we transition to, it's like I guess for every religion.
At the Pesantren, your teachers were women.
Women, yeah. Even in Texas, there's like a few women, because it never such a big problem until like somehow you move on to a community that is not yours and you don't know anybody there, and then there's somehow like there's a different norm and different concept. All the people coming in from who are mostly coming in from a country of strife and refugees, and so they tend to get. So it's like, oh, and there's always this idea that as if like you have to measure up to what our standard of being Muslim is, which is interesting because I will be coming in. The board invite me here to lead prayers for Ramadan because for the evening, but during the day, since you don't know me and I don't have the beard and I don't look the part, I don't wear this, I just look like a student because I'm always forever look like I'm 18, like because of the Indonesian gene, right? So I will walk in and I'll be like, why are you just going straight to the imam spot? It's like, well, I thought if I'm leading at night, I'm leading during the day too, right? It's just like, I'm sorry, it's like, but then like it's always like, and then if they, and then they listen to me reading, it's like, oh, how did you learn how to read? Where did you convert? I was like, I'm from Indonesia, I never converted. Like, oh, so it's always like you have to measure up, because I think there's an idea, because like the Muslim community has been as many as there are race, and also from their nationality, but also experiences, and then a lot of time this experiences has been undermined with whatever the loudest voice of the time of the media. So then they tend to hide within their own spheres and corners. So like people like me who break the norms, sometimes I have to remind them like, hey, we exist. Like there's a whole narrative that's different than your life, and that's okay, and that's a part of the mercy from God. Isn't that what the Quran says? Like diversity is mercy, and then so.
I think, this is a huge conversation, but I know in traveling with this very, very well-known female reciter here in the States, and we've done sort of up and down the East Coast, many presentations in universities where the Muslim Students Organization are from all different walks of life, and the students themselves tend to be very conservative, like, oh, well, women, no, they don't do that.
Yeah.
Or they have all these ideas about this isn't allowed, and this isn't allowed, and this isn't allowed. And I think it's more of the fact that there's no kind of cultural template for Islam in the United States the way there is, say, in Indonesia.
Right.
And, you go to Indonesia and you realize that, that there's this incredibly rich culture of recitation, of lots of people studying, and women and girls, and very, very open attitude toward the experience of religion. I know when I was in Oman, where I also do field work, and it was Ramadan, and I was with the director of the music school where I was studying, and I said, oh, could I come with you to the mosque? And everybody just laughed. Oh, well, what would you be doing at the mosque? I said, well, I know what to do. I've been before. Whereas in Indonesia, people would say, oh, no, of course you're coming.
Of course,
right?
right.
I would say be with the women, right? And I would dress appropriately.
Sure.
But there wouldn't be like, oh, no, you're not allowed, or something like that. So it really depends on the cultural context. So, I think both of you play such incredibly important roles in your communities, but also in talking about what you do with audiences who don't do what you do. Keep it up. More questions? Yep, please, in the front, and then that, and there. Yeah.
Thank you so much for what you presented. The word Sufi has come up a couple times, and this is just a really quick announcement because there's actually a new Sufi center in Richmond that just a year ago, and there's going to be a program on Thursday night about music, but this is sound and music, so we've got little parts.
Who is that? Who's performing?
Sahaba Ali Khan is coming from California, and Princeton and Khan is the teacher that
Great. Okay. Thank you. And then, kind of diagonally, yes, please.
Can I answer it?
Please.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. The answer is uniform. Simply because when the first call of prayers happen, people compete. They want to be the one who call it, because they're trying to figure out because in the beginning, like, how to get people together? Should we use blow horns? Like, no, then people will assume that it's a synagogue. It's like, okay, should we ring bells? Like, no, but they thought it's a church. Like, okay, then what do we do? And then it's like, why don't we just call it? Just verbalize it and then word it. And then eventually there was, it come up with how the verbalizations will be. And then, so everybody's like, oh, I want to be the one who's doing that. But then, if you ever watch this animation called Bilal, who just came out recently, like this year, about like a freedom, like a slave who wanted his freedom, was in Saudi Arabia, and then eventually he got free and he became a free slave, and he's an African descent, and then the Prophet Muhammad decided, Bilal, you go up there, go climb up the top of the mosque and read it, because you have the most beautiful and loudest voice. And then then he go up, and then everybody, ever since then, he will be the only one doing adhan, called to prayer for years. And then so some companions come to the Prophet, it's like, we're jealous, because like he get to do it, and then we don't get to do it. And it's like, well, you get the same reward if you respond with the same words when you hear it. And then because like if the idea is to rewards, then you can do that. And then. But so then the response is the same except a few, especially the one who's like called toward prayers. It's like, yes, we will. Like that's. But then for the rest of them, it's similar. Like Allahu Akbar and Allahu Akbar. So people responded the same, and that's why sometimes there'll be groups. If I were to say, La ilaha illallah at the end, everybody's La ilaha illallah. They'll just start saying like, and sometimes it get documented wrongly. And like if in the Instagram, it sounds like, oh, it's like everybody just get up. No, but it's to respond if you want to. A side note of that though, when Bilal stopped giving adhan is when the Prophet passed away. Muhammad, because like in the second stand, there's I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God. He couldn't go finish the word Muhammad because Muhammad is no longer there, and he just like, I can't do this anymore. And then he stopped. I can't do this anymore because whenever I said that, the Prophet will come out. But he's not here anymore, so I can't do it anymore. So then, after that, then generation of people start going and doing it, and then and it opens as it is. But you have such a, when I was such I never thought adhan could be that emotional. I was like, oh, I guess if it's like if you were there since the beginning and it's not there anymore, like, and you're just like, I can't do it. And then it's like people are like, hey, Bilal, we miss you. Can you just please do it? And then in his lifetime, 20 years later, he only do it twice. Like and then when whoever was alive at the time and hear Bilal speak, they start crying because they remember the day when Islam started and how it become now. And they were like, one of them is like when they're in Palestine. But it's interesting that call to prayers in itself is a start of not just the prayers, because sometimes like I mentioned in the beginning of the talk, that there's like the wording changes, like instead of Hayya ala Salah, Hayya al Falah, like come to prayers, come to our victory. Sometimes the word changes, like come, there's an urgency, there's a trial, there's an issue. So like if there's an attack, or if there is a earthquake, there's a tsunami, like so people.
And also the Shi'i has Ali.
Like you change it to kind of like accommodate to like to get people to kind of notice, because the mosque is not just a place of worship, but it's like a sanctuary, a community center, like a places where like everything started there. Like
Yeah, I think in answer to your question, like on the quotidian level, like what happens when people hear call to prayer, I think it varies very much from person to person. It doesn't mean that people like drop to their knees and pray right at that moment. On Friday, most men go to the mosque.
Right.
And people who are pious, who pray, they get their prayers in at some point, and if they're together, they will do them together, or they'll find a place, whether if you're in the airport or if you're in a restaurant or something, there's always a place where you can pray. But sometimes if you're on the road, you can't pray. But often when I'm with Maria, people will say like, well, have we prayed? We haven't done our afternoon moment. Well, why don't we go there first and then we can pray when we're there? I mean, they work it in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a very practical approach to doing that. And then some people, there's just a whole range of different kinds of practices, right?
Yeah, there's a spectrum to it. And I think one thing I forgot is like the adhan is very linguistic, it's very melodious, but then it's not necessarily mean that it's the prayer happened now. There's another one. The adhan is simply that the time of prayer has reached. So the right of the time now from here to here is now this prayer has come. But then there's another one that called iqama, which is an actual literal time to pray, standing, and that's shortened and faster. An example, like earlier you hear Adhan, so the other one will be Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, qad qamat as-salah, qad qamat as-salah, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. It's faster, just kind of like, it's time, let's go. And it's like, so there'll be an additional one of that. And then those tend to be more rushed and louder, and that's essentially where people use like, okay, if I want to pray, I want to pray in the mosque or catch the people, then this is what I gotta do. But it's like something so like if you go to a Muslim country, you'd be like, one time you'd be like so melodious and suddenly become rushed. It's not that nothing had changed. It's just like, oh, now it's like this is the time that this particular masjid start to pray, and then so if you will come, then come here. If not, then don't. But like it's the but it's harder to talk about iqama because essentially adhan is just shortened. So
Was there one more question back here? I don't want to keep people all night long. Anybody else? Did I see another hand? Way in the back, yes, please.
I was wondering, you mentioned a lot about Javanese melodies, but you also have quite an extensive background in Indonesia as a whole. Were there other melodies from the diverse communities within Indonesia that also inform recitations that you can speak to that?
Well, I mean, I certainly can because of, the reciters that come from different areas. For example, if they come from West Java or if they come from, Sumatra or something like that, they're so clever. They can imitate recitation in their voice. And I think they, people brought the melodies back from Mecca originally. But, pilgrims went to Mecca, but then they didn't just go for a pilgrimage. They would go and they would stay and they would study, and sometimes they would get married and spend years and then come back. And so the Meccan melodies, like real old timers can do the Meccan melodies. But then with air travel and with radio and so forth, the big Egyptian sheikhs became, the thing that everybody imitated, and many Egyptian sheikhs came to Indonesia, and that was extremely well institutionalized in a number of colleges and also with the competition system. But everybody admits that there's no way that people could all just sing in beautiful Arabic maqam and intonation with all its quarter tones and so forth, and that there had to be regional styles that were then kind of washed out. And so kind of bringing these regional styles back, for some people can be controversial because, that's not appropriate for reciting the Quran. But other people feel like this is a lovely thing to do because it shows that kind of very regional quality. And I would imagine there are similar discourses in other countries like Pakistan and Turkey and Africa and so forth, where there are really strong local melodic and musical traditions, and then there's the authoritative, Arabic, kind of internationally recognized Arabic style of not only pronunciation but also melody.
But to add on, even the tradition, the accepted Arabic even differ. It's different depending on where you are in the Arab country, because there's like 7, 8, 9, 14 different style of recitation that's already accepted as the mainstream Arabic
in
anyway.
The pronunciation,
in the pronunciations and in this reading. So, but like one of the interesting parts, like you will go to a mosque where it's not catering to an actual prayer time. There will be like some kind of shows where essentially different group of people from different countries will be invited, and they'll be reciting the same line over and over again, and just with different. And I never understood that until I was like, they asked me to do it. It's like, oh wait, hold on, we saying different things. Like it's the same line, but it's just sound different. And then that's only I noticed that after like I sit down with the people who is trying to recite. Because before I was just like, why are you repeating the same verse over and over? What duha? Like how many times can you say duha? Like, and I was just like, oh, like so. Then it kind of like it's like an ocean, right? It's always something new you can find, and like it just layers there.
That's kind of bringing back to your subject of, Sufism and Islam and the different spaces and names. Sometimes people think of Sufism as inside of Islam, other times outside. It really varies on so much in different points of view. So something like that, which I would think of as zikr or zikir, where you repeat something, and like I know Javanese like version, La ilaha illallah
Right.
Muhammadan Rasulullah.
And then you go back again to
La ilaha
Here we go.
illallah
All right.
Muhammadan Rasulullah.
Right,
You know,
right.
and it's very like a folky, not like I was singing more classical musics of Indonesia earlier, but like that's more like a folk melody that would be used in zikir or remembrance practice, repeating these.
It's a rich, rich world.
Yeah.
And, it's wonderful that you've been here to learn a little bit about it, and we don't want to keep you all night. But clearly, the interest is palpable, and shall we thank our guests? And before we do, yes, Andy.
I just want to remind you of the events that are coming up. So if you're interested in hearing how, say, these melodic structures of the maqam are translated onto a large symphonic context, or the ways in which they feel to do so completely, come see the performance on Wednesday in Camp Concert Hall with the Richmond Symphony Orchestra and with Anne's Middle Eastern Ensemble, these really amazing Persian musicians, and you'll really get to hear the
Yeah,
ways
that's
in
going to
which
be
these
amazing.
traditions kind of interact and inform, maybe even sometimes misunderstand each other.
Yeah.
There are brochures out there about the Tucker Boatwright series. This is a year-long series, and we have many, many events. So please grab one of those brochures, and let's please thank
And actually, let's thank Andy for bringing us together with no rehearsal at all. It's really delightful.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes, our group has been practicing hard, and we have two fantastic Iranian musicians with us on Wednesday evening. So I think the concert will be quite wonderful. And if anybody's interested in Women Out Loud in Indonesia, I have a pretty major lecture on Tuesday evening, October 9th, in Williamsburg at William and Mary, which was postponed because of the hurricane that never happened. So here a month later, I'm giving my big fancy faculty lecture, but it's called Women Out Loud, the Gendered Landscape of Islamic Performance.
Oh, I love the titles.
Yeah. So
Sweet.
you'll be able to meet many of my heroines in Indonesia. So anyway,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for coming. If you have any more questions, I'm sure you can come up and ask them, but let's not keep them too late, especially the sick ones. But let's thank them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.